Things just took a scary turn as we have a massive Toronto Maple Leafs update to go over today surrounding John Tavares. And as the days go by, each day inches closer and closer to free agency with no contract done, situation keeps getting scarier and scarier. But we have a brand new report that has dropped revealing some unseen information up until this point surrounding John Tavares and his future in Toronto. We're going to break that down as well as discuss some other updates, folks, because things are getting a little bit crazy. But before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content, folks. And you guys have been absolute beasts for the support. So if you're enjoying it, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Free agency is going to be crazy in less than a week's time. Darius, it is June 25th, a week away from free agency, 6 days actually. John Tavares and Matthew Knies, neither of which. Matthew Knies not extended, John Tavares not extended, and we finally have some more insight on the situation. And it's not exactly what I wanted to hear. And let's dive into it here. There's a lot of different things. But let's start with the Pierre LeBrun report, then we'll dive into the one you just saw there. I believe that if the Maple Leafs put a 5x4 deal in front of John Tavares, he would sign it. Now let's start with the positive report, and then we're going to dive into some of the more pessimistic side of things. So Darius, I just want to get your thoughts on this. This is, of course, $5 million over 4 years. Pierre LeBrun says he would sign it. And this is interesting because obviously the Leafs have yet to get a deal done. But when you're talking about, different reports, we're hearing some people say he might not return to Toronto. There's some people saying that, the Leafs are a little bit hesitant on getting John Tavares this amount of money. And the full quote was, I believe that if John Tavares and the Leafs, if the Leafs offer $20 million over 4 years, he would sign it. But neither side is there yet. But I think it ends up being the sweet spot if this gets done here in the 7 days. So this is taking a bit of an interesting turn anyway. We have a bit of a scary report in a minute. Let's start with the positive here. Do you think that the Leafs get this done? And also, pretty interesting note here surrounding the actual amount for the first time that we've heard surrounding Tavares.
Yeah, there's some other shocking details as well as it pertains to why the Leafs are offering him, what they're offering him. We'll get to that later in the video as well. And it could make some sense. It might actually, again, give us some insight into why this is happening and why the negotiations are going the way they are going. But I honestly think with John Tavares right now, it's 50-50. And I think it would be a good thing on a really reasonable contract to have him back as a Toronto Maple Leaf. We'll talk about his role again later in the video. But I think it's honestly 50-50 at this point. But we're finally getting some numbers and some insight from insiders as well. So negotiations are happening, right? Like they're trying to get this done. Deadlines get things done as well. So as we inch closer to next Tuesday, because like you mentioned, we're less than a week away at this point, we're going to probably hear more and more every day that, they're trying to chip away at it. Now, we know that the Leafs came in with an offer under $4 million. That's not going to get it done, but that's how negotiations work, right? Like, of course, the Leafs are not going to come in and be like, hey, John, do you want exactly what you're asking for? Like, that would never happen, right? So John Tavares is actually probably asking for something in the $7 million range, right? And they're going to meet somewhere in the middle. And I think I would do a 4-year deal at $5 million. I think that could be somewhat fair, especially with the salary cap rising and the fact that John Tavares, he can play on the special team still. We don't know what his role would be, in terms of is he even playing center? Again, we'll get to that later. But I think it's going to get very interesting as we go day by day here. They're going to try and get this done. Like, I think they want to re-sign him, right? But if it comes down to the fact that Tavares is like, listen, I can make $3 or $4 million more somewhere else. Maybe I'd rather do that. That's what it's going to come down to, how badly he wants to be a Toronto Maple Leaf and where he sees himself with the team versus where the team sees him, right? So I think it's going to be very interesting as we head down the stretch here, but I think they're trying to get it done. But honestly, it's 50-50 to me at this point. But again, deadlines as they creep closer, feelings change and all that good stuff. So I do wonder if they end up getting this done towards the end of the week. That's something that's kind of in the middle of what they're both asking for.
Yeah, if this hits July 1st, I think the odds shift vastly in the the field's favor rather than the Leafs. But you can see here from Chris Johnson, I don't think either side has showed its hand yet regarding John Tavares and the Leafs, and we're like a week away. I expected this to be done a few days ago, maybe even a week or two ago. I figured that this was going to be, and even the Matthew Knies extension still isn't done. They're clearly holding out for something here. And Pierre LeBrun on the overdrive said, I know for a fact that unless there's term attached, there's no way Tavares signs for $5 million with the Leafs. It's going to have to be more than that. No interest in bringing back a wash JT. Let him walk. So, I mean, kind of almost contradicting himself here. Two different reports. I don't think that, anything has changed there. I have become more and more open and almost wanting the Leafs to let John Tavares walk because the number I said was anything more than $5 million and you let him walk. And when you put it at like $20 million over 4 years, it doesn't seem terrible, especially when there's reports of, the Leafs offering Brad Marchand $9 million over 4 years, which I don't think is going to be the case, but that's what Public Net kind of been rooming. We'll video on that soon. I don't think that this is a smart decision if it's over 5. And I think, if it's $6 million, even I feel like you can find other players that do. And there's a very good chance, as much as we love John Tavares, that he goes back to what he was similar to the year before last year. I think there's a more likely chance that he's that player next year versus what he was last year. Granted, a fantastic year last year. He managed to stay healthy for most of the year. All these different things. But there's this report from Freeman, and some teams believe that John Tavares, despite being 13 months older than Brock Nelson, could land a 3-year, $7.5 million AAV. I am not remotely interested in that. I'm also even less interested now in letting, a crazy 6 or 7 year deal. I think I'm just starting to want a complete DNA shift, and that's Mitch Marner walk, John Tavares walk. And I'd rather, and this might be a crazy take anyways, overpay Brad Marchand, not for $9 million maybe, but even if it's $8 million, maybe even 9, whatever it ends up being. I'd rather, in general, overpay Brad Marchand than John Tavares, even though I still think John Tavares probably has a higher, might be a better overall player at this point of their career, especially being a couple years younger. I just want to see a different team, and maybe that's just bias of wanting to see a different team. I don't think this gets done for $5 million, and as much as they're talking about it, the way that Elliot Freeman has been tweeting and reporting, to me, it seems more like for the Leafs, 6.5, for any other team, 7.58.
Yeah, I think like $8 million on the open market. I keep bringing up Stamkos, right? He can get that money. He can get that exact contract. I do truly believe that it's out there. And with the Toronto Maple Leafs, I feel like Treliving and the organization have to put their foot down finally and go, listen, I don't know if we necessarily view you like we did 6 years ago, right? In terms of where you fit into the lineup. It's $5 million or no, right? Like we're not going any higher. We can talk about term. Like if we can get the dollar amount down and we give you an extra year, something like that, we go more of the Chris Tanev route. Maybe let's talk about that, right? But if it's more than 5 million, no. And some reports are saying that could possibly get it done at 5 million. It depends on a couple other things and different factors. But any less than that, it's not going to get it done. And I feel like the Leafs are trying to get it done for less than that because ideally you would want to, right? But there's a lot going into this, and I just don't know if the team actually, views him or anybody at this point as the second line center anymore. I think that he could, and I've said this, he could come in and play it, but I feel like you probably want somebody else to replace him in that role at this point. You want to get a little bit younger. Maybe some more foot speed in there as well, right? Maybe move him down to the third line center or move him to the wing. So I think that's kind of what they're looking at right now. And they're like, we can't really afford to pay him this to be, a third line center, let's say, or even the second line center and the only second line center, our only option, right? So I think they're looking at everything right now. They're also taking their time, which I don't mind. I can appreciate that, but they do have to start making some decisions in the next 6 days. And again, there's a lot going into this one, but I still remain, I think it's 50-50 at this point. I don't think I would hate it if they moved on from him as long as they have a backup plan, of course, but it's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned it there briefly about bouncing off what you said. You see here from Nick Kypreos, he reported that the Leafs are interested in re-signing John Tavares, but no longer view him as a second-line center. They hope to extend John while looking for a true 2C. If this is true, there probably isn't a number I wouldn't welcome Tavares back at. The bigger issue for me was role. Tavares as a confirmed 3C would be a great start to the offseason. And this I agree with. 4x5, sure, get it done, have him as a 3C. Yep. I don't think that's going to happen, and the more reports that come out here, I think it leans towards the fact that he's probably, at least there's a higher likelihood, at least there was a week ago, about him being gone. Still, sides are on the Leafs, favor here. Odds are in the Leafs' favor, rather. Sorry, but it's going to be interesting to see. And let us know down below what your thoughts are on all of this, because there's talks about JJ Peterka. There's talks about a bunch of other players that can replace not John Tavares, but Mitch Marner. The big question mark will be if John Tavares leaves now, what is the Leafs plan going for? But that'll wrap it up. A quick note before we wrap up as well. You can see here, Hall of Fame, congratulations to a couple of these guys, including Joe Thornton, although didn't have, the best tenure with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Congratulations to all of them. But let us know what your thoughts are on all this news, especially this new John Tavares update. There's a lot of them. We're keeping you up to date. You guys are be. Thanks for watching. See you later.